All right, set. Check. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. Check. All right. Good evening, everybody. Welcome to the April 12th, 2024 Rocky Mountain Creation Fellowship meeting. We are live on YouTube from Littleton Baptist Church in Littleton, Colorado. Just for your information, if you want to come to, if you're here, you know this. If you're not here and you're out there in YouTube land or whatever that is, we meet in person live every second Friday of each month at 7 o'clock. So you're welcome to come to the meeting. In fact, I encourage you to come to the meeting. It's more fun when you're here in person. So anyway, with that, let us open with a prayer. Jim, would you like to come up and give us a short prayer?
Dear Heavenly Father, we humbly come before your throne of grace. And Lord, give us wisdom, give us patience, give us understanding. There's a whole world out there that doesn't believe in you, and we need to reach them. We love them, you love them, but we need to clarify the creation that you've given us and the world that you've given us. Help us to do that, Lord. Help us to be kind, help us to have a backbone to reach out to them. Guide us, give us wisdom and understanding. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen.
Thank you, Jim. All right, tonight's scripture reading is Isaiah 40, verse 22. It is he who sits above the circle of the earth, and its people are like grasshoppers, who stretches out the heavens like a curtain, and spreads them out like a tent to dwell in. And I'll just add a little side note on that. They didn't realize that the universe had been spread out until the early 20th century, when they started getting data in that shows that the universe is expanding, or at least was expanded. So, with that, let us introduce tonight's speaker, Mike Weeks. He is a member of our sister creation science organization, Pikes Peak Creation Fellowship. He has worked for various government agencies as a park ranger, including Colorado Springs Parks and Recreation. As a geologist and paleontologist, Mr. Weeks is an avid collector of rocks and fossils. And tonight's talk will be on the restless earth, an intro to volcanoes from a creationist perspective. So with that, let's welcome Mike Weeks.
Thank you very much, and thanks for inviting me. And is this working okay?
No, it's
the green light is on. There we go. So what you see up here is from Rich Cloud, my leader in my creation fellowship in Colorado Springs. It's so easy to get sued now if you don't have a safe image with the proper credit line. So Rich has helped me out with this, and he's helped me in getting images that are safe and that have credit lines, and Rich is the one who put the credit lines on here. So I am very grateful to Rich Cloud for his help. So this is just an introduction to volcanoes from a creationist perspective. I call myself a young earth creationist. Some of you probably prefer biblical creationist, but any old earth Christian will claim to believe the Bible. So that's why I'm sticking with the old label of young earth creationist. I love volcanoes. I love the geology of the West. I've seen a lot of the West. I've seen a lot of our geologic features. I used to live up in the high desert of California, where there are a lot of volcanoes and lava flows, and And I haven't seen everything, but I've seen a lot. And so that's part of the reason I'm so interested in this topic. And I also was a rock hound since I was about 9 years old.
You're our kind of guy.
So I've got rocks in my head. So there are currently over 500 active volcanoes on our planet. And eruptions occur almost every day. And when you turn on your computer, it seems like there's always a volcano going off somewhere in the world. Earth is a restless planet, and nothing is more active than volcanoes on a worldwide scale. Now, you're probably familiar with this book, Footprints in the Ash. It's about Mount St. Helens, written by John Morris and Stephen Austin. It's a great book, but I'm partly showing this to say, let's move on from Mount St. Helens. I know there's a lot of great lessons there, but there's such a wide open field with volcanoes. They're such a prominent part of Earth. I would like to see creationists spend more time with volcanoes. I'd like to see Andrew Snelling write a book just about volcanoes. You know, if you get on the websites of our major creation organizations and look in their stores, they don't have anything on volcanoes except for Mount St. Helens. So here's my plan to describe the big picture, both below the ground and above the ground. Describe the types of volcanoes by their compositions. Talk about minerals and gemstones. And probably about halfway through, I'll stop and just talk about some of my specimens on the table. A lot of this I found myself. Some of it I bought, but a lot of this is from my life. And then look at various religious views about volcanoes, including evolution. It's my position that evolution is a secular religion. And that's where I'm coming from tonight. Discuss where volcanoes might fit into the Bible, even though the Bible doesn't use that word, and encourage you to visit our volcanic sites. The volcano here is Kilauea in Hawaii. So first, the big picture. Earth is composed of a solid inner core, a liquid outer core, a churning mantle, and a very thin crust. Here's some fast facts about the crust of the Earth. Oceanic crust is 4 to 6 miles thick and is mostly basaltic. And I'll talk about basalt later. Continental crust is 12 to 43 miles thick and is mostly granitic. The continents are less dense than the mantle and float on top of the mantle. The mantle is a churning mixture of elements, molten gas, molten material, and gas. All magmas contain water and gas. In fact, I've read that what volcanoes emit, as far as their gases, it's close to 70% water vapor. Molten material below the surface of the Earth is called magma, and above the surface is called lava. So this is the current theory of the crust of the Earth. This is a secular picture, but I do hold to catastrophic plate tectonics. I know that's controversial, especially along the Front Range. but this is my position. So this is all the mantle. And then you see see a very thin crust up at the top. This, I guess I have to face this way.
No. Something wrong with the microphone. Let's try that.
Thank you. So you can see how thin the crusts are. And then on the left side, you see a hot spot where magma is coming up in the middle of the ocean to form a shield volcano. An example of that would be Hawaii. And then in the middle, we see a oceanic ridge spreading out where magma comes up and spreads both ways. An example of a volcano there would be Iceland. And then the plate subducts underneath the continent or the island, generating new magma to form a volcano on land. And an example of that could be Japan. So this is a picture of Red Hill Cinder Cone. I used to live near here, so I know this area pretty well. That's the southern Sierra Nevada mountains on the left. So Red Hill is a cinder cone where it's just made of cinders that formed a volcano. Cinder cones are smaller and fairly recent, and they're extinct. At least we hope so. Red Hill is interesting because the cinder cone itself is red, but the surrounding basalt is black. So Red Hill is right about here. Then the Cascade Range of California is all volcanic. There's all kinds of volcanic features in Southern California. You know, we have Lassen, Shasta. Cascade Range goes all the way up into Washington, where Mount St. Helens is. This whole area has lots of very thick basalt flows. In some areas, the basalt is about a mile thick. And Idaho has Craters of the Boone. I don't know too much about Wyoming or Montana. Colorado doesn't have very much. I'm a little disappointed in our state. What volcanoes we do have been eroded away. New Mexico has lots of volcanic activity here. Arizona, the northern part of the state, Flagstaff, and that goes up into central Utah. Of course, Hawaii is all volcanic, and then the Aleutians of Alaska. So on any day, there's volcanoes erupting all over the world. Now, this is from October of 2022, but if you get on Volcano Discovery, you'll see a more current depiction of our volcanoes. But what we have today is probably very close to this. We know volcanoes can be destructive, but they can also be beneficial to life on Earth. Volcanic soils are usually very fertile once they become soils. Of course, that can take quite some time. This is the Mayon volcano in the Philippines, which I think it's a beautiful volcano. It's one of the most symmetrical volcanoes on Earth, and that's all farmland in the foreground. So volcanoes release nutrients into the ocean, which feed phytoplankton, or microscopic plants. They, in turn, feed the rest of the food chain. Phytoplankton also release much of the oxygen necessary for life on Earth. So now we'll look at types of volcanoes by their compositions. Volcanoes come in many varieties, from the slow and calm to the fast and explosive. It all depends on the essential molecule of silicon dioxide. Also called silica, it makes up a great part of the material inside the earth. You may be familiar with this book, Biblical Geology 101 by Michael Ord and Robert Carter. Very good book, but it's just geology about the flood. And again, that's my complaint about geology books from the creation ministries. They focus on the flood, but I'd like to see them write something that's more of a physical geology book with volcanoes in it. But according to them, oxygen makes up 50% of our rocks and silicon makes up 25%. Quartz and its volcanic varieties are made of pure silica. A little later I'll show you some agates and obsidian and things like that. These are our basic volcanic lavas. This is very simplified, so if you need more information than this, I can show you the chart in my petrology book. But I tried to make this very basic. So rhyolite is very high in silica, dacite has less, andesite has less, basalt is low in silica. These first three are related. Basalt is very different. Rhyolite is characterized by a high viscosity, which means it's thick and pasty, and it erupts with ash clouds and tuff. And the equivalent of rhyolite underground is granite. And an example of a rhyolite area is Yellowstone. Now basalt is very low, has a low viscosity, meaning it's thin and fluid, characterized by basalt flows. And the equivalent underground is gabbro. And of course, Hawaii is a good example of a basalt area. So an example of this explosive volcano is Mount St. Helens, primarily dacite, very high in silica. I happened to live in Oregon in May of 1980, so my truck was covered with a thin layer of ash. The explosion kind of went to the north, not to the south so much, but Oregon still got some. Possibly the most famous volcano is Mount Vesuvius, which erupted over Pompeii in 79 AD. This image is from the movie Pompeii. You can't really see Vesuvius, but this is kind of the top of the volcano. And like most high silica volcanoes, it has the high ash clouds, but also has the low, fast pyroclastic flows that destroyed the town. An example of a calm volcano would be Kilauea, which is made of basalt and low in silica. There's two basic forms for basalt. The first one is A'a, which is real rough and blocky. And then Pahoehoe, which is smooth, ropey, thinner. And in basalt, we also see columnar jointing. This is hexagonal columns that formed by contraction due to cooling. And some geologists feel like water had something to do with that forming of hexagonal columns. But I've noticed they only occur in thicker flows. And a good example would be Devil's Postpile National Monument in California. Now I think the prettiest columnar joining is at Toketee Falls, Oregon, in southern Oregon. I visited here. It's not only a beautiful waterfall, but it has beautiful columnar jointing on both sides. Sometimes a volcano will change between high silica ash falls and basaltic lava flows. So you see here's an ash fall here and a lava flow. Now, volcanoes don't usually alternate like this, but it's still a good illustration. And then at the top you have the vent. And one of my favorite features is aerial bombs coming out of the vent. And I'll show you some little ones later on. And I threw this in just because I see a lot of beauty in volcanoes and their lava flows. Now, minerals and gemstones. Volcanoes and volcanic rocks are one of the ways minerals and gems are created. As the rocks cooled, mineral-rich water circulated upward and deposited valuable metals like gold and silver. Colorado mines have produced great quantities of these valuable metals. We have a lot of our old mining towns that are fun to visit. But I'm thinking of one specific area, and that's US 550 that goes from Ouray to Durango. And if you haven't taken that drive yet, I highly recommend it. Just a gorgeous drive. One of the most beautiful areas of Colorado. This is Ouray, the pictures of the town of Ouray in the San Juan Mountains. This area contains some igneous intrusive rocks and some sedimentary rocks, but it's mostly volcanic deposits. The San Juan Mountains also include some calderas, which are collapsed volcanoes. In the foreground, you can see the hot springs, which are, of course, heated from underground activity, volcanic activity. So this is just a sample of the drive above Ouray. Ouray is kind of in the background down in the valley. But here you can see some of the mining activity from the 1870s. You see some mine buildings and mine tailings here. There are many interesting mines along this highway that you can visit. They're pretty accessible. And this ends up at Silverton. Silverton sits within a caldera and has many mines in the area. Silverton has produced more than $150 million in silver, gold, lead, copper, and zinc. And this is one of the terminals for the Durango train. Gemstones, both precious and semi-precious, can originate in volcanic rocks. Semi-precious stones are commonly non-crystalline varieties of silica, like obsidian, agate, and opal. Opal is just hydrated silica. Agate is banded silica, and the colors come from impurities in the solution. It sounds funny, it comes from the impurities, and yet they look so pretty. Agates and geodes can form in lava as it cools. Silica-rich water can percolate through gas cavities and deposit layers of silica. If a cavity remains, the silica may form crystals, as is depicted here. Where are diamonds formed? Diamonds are thought to form deep in the mantle. They are transported up primarily by kimberlite magmas, which are rare and lower in silica than basalt. Diamonds are usually brought up to the surface in kimberlite pipes or vents. Now, I don't know if you knew this, but Colorado has kimberlite pipes and diamond mines in an area northwest of Fort Collins. So this is Fort Collins down in the right-hand corner. The dashed line is our state line, and all of the black diamonds are diamond mines. And then the picture on the right is of Colorado diamonds. Okay, now I'll show you a few of my rock samples. So this is kind of going sort of the same order, or high silica to low silica. So this is rhyolite. I found this in the middle of Utah. This is obsidian. Obsidian is usually found in rhyolite because of it's so high in silica. I found this one in Colorado, California, along the Sierra Nevadas. This is obsidian from this same area in the middle of Utah. Now, sometimes obsidian has these little crystal inclusions. They call that snowflake obsidian. Some of these have beautiful shapes. There's some snowflake obsidian, but this used to be a cavity inside the rock, and it filled in with silica. Now, very closely related to obsidian is pumice. Pumice has so much gas within it, and still trapped within it, that it usually floats on water. So I found these at the Salton Sea, if you've ever been to the Salton Sea, where there's a very good rhyolite deposit. In fact, along with the pumice, I found a deposit of real frothy obsidian that was sort of an intermediate between the two.
The cup with the floating rock in it?
This?
Yeah, so everybody can see it.
I think it will stay afloat. But these are kind of rounded. They're rounded from wave action. I found these on the beach at the Salton Sea. And then sometimes obsidian can have a beautiful brown color. This is called mahogany obsidian. This is from Mexico. And then I have some agates. See, all three of these are from Mexico. You can see that where this still had some space, and within that space it crystallized out, and this is starting to crystallize also. This is probably my nicest one, this little one. I don't mind if you pick this one up. This is an agate from Brazil, and you can hold it up to the light, and it's very pretty. Some amethyst from Uruguay, also here. Uruguay has some of the most beautiful color of amethyst, which is basically purple quartz. Quartz is amazing because it can form deep within the earth and above the surface of the earth. But this testifies to the creativity of God, that all these beautiful things that are made of silica they're really basically the same as your old quartz crystal. Fluorescent. I don't know if you've ever gone to fluorescent fossil beds. It's a little closer to my area. But I couldn't find out exactly what kind of lava that they had there, but I would call it andesite. So this is a sample of their lava. And then the volcano that they had in that area, which was near Guffey, contributed to the shale that the fossils are found in. and some basalt from Utah. This is a nice one, basalt from Hawaii. Both sides of this are beautiful. This was given to me. And then basalt from Red Hill Cinder Cone. And then down in farther south, Pisgah Crater, which is kind of near Barstow. This is good basalt from there, Pisgah Crater. And then Amboy Crater, which is farther out in the desert. Whenever basalt has a lot of bubble holes like this, it's called scoria. And then these are little volcanic bombs that I found. I don't remember which crater I found these at. It might have been Amboy. But these are basically drops of basalt that were ejected out and solidified while they were in the air. And then some native copper from Michigan on basalt. A lot of our copper comes from Michigan. And I should show these off too. My buddy and I used to go down to Sonora, Mexico to look for arrowheads. And down there, the basalt is so fine-grained that the Indians can chip arrowheads out of them. So those top ones are obsidian, but down below those are arrowheads made out of basalt. Okay, religious views. Volcanoes have inspired different kinds of religious feelings all over the world. Some people create volcanic gods and goddesses. Others gain spiritual feelings from volcanic stones and crystals. And many evolutionists view volcanoes as essential for their origin of life, especially in the oceans. Vulcan. Ancient pagans invented gods and goddesses that personified natural forces. The Romans invented Vulcan, who was the god of volcanoes, deserts, and metalworking. Volcanoes are named after Vulcan. Vulcan was the Roman equivalent of the Greek god Hephaestus, the Greek god of fire. And we have to talk about Pele. By the way, Rob told me he worked on Kilauea, and you might want to ask him about some of his adventures there. But in Hawaii, Pele is the goddess of volcanoes, even today. In the minds of the faithful, she expresses her emotions through volcanic activity. Many modern-day Hawaiians are devoted to Pele and bring her offerings of food wrapped in leaves. And I've only been to Hawaii once on the Big Island, but we went down to the basalt flows, and I saw this little bundle of something wrapped in leaves that somebody had left for Pele. Pele is famous for her hot temper. When she is offended, she will kill or exact revenge. She will literally explode with anger in Kilauea. So this brings us to the true story of the High Chiefess, Kapiolani. There are two Kapiolanis. This is about the first one. Christian missionaries came to Hawaii in 1820, and Chiefess Kapiolani became a Christian and helped to build a church on the Big Island of Hawaii. In 1824, Kapiolani decided to defy Pele publicly. So Kapiolani and her group hiked to the edge of the active Kilauea volcano crater after she was warned to leave by a priestess of Pele. So this is somewhat similar to Elijah's contest with Baal. So she has her group behind her. This is very public. Kapiolani read her Bible and prayed. So she has this churning lava below her. She feels the heat, but she picked up stones and threw stones into the crater in defiance of Pele. And then she waited, and nothing happened. So the group made the long journey home, and she arrived home unharmed. I actually got this story from a secular book about Pele. New Age faith in stones and crystals. You probably know about this, the value they place on stones and crystals. Most New Age people prefer to be called metaphysical. The New Age faith is a westernized form of Eastern religions, especially Hinduism. They believe in a pantheistic oneness between the earth, its creatures, and its geology. To them, all things are connected spiritually. They believe the earth will bestow special powers to humans through its rocks, stones, minerals, and crystals, and to a lesser extent, fossils. And I don't know if you ever go to the Denver Rock Show every September. There's a big rock show in the northern part of Denver, and they really cater to the metaphysical crowd. The metaphysical crowd will make many bizarre claims about stones and crystals. For example, stones and crystals can release negative emotions. They can attract angelic energy. They can heighten intuition and creativity. They can attract wealth. They can heal physical ailments. That's a big one. They can aid a person's spiritual evolution, and they can connect a person to other spiritual beings. And they're always open to other voices out there. So this is my first response as a Christian to the claims about stones and crystals. The human mind can imagine and even feel the benefits of stones and crystals, but there are no spiritual connections between stones and humans. Stones are just stones. People should seek the Creator as revealed in the Holy Bible, rather than seeking something they imagine in nature. So here's some benefits that are claimed for volcanic stones using 3 examples, starting with agate. Among other things, the claim is made that agates can heal physical ailments. So my response, stones are no substitute for the medical profession. I have visited doctors for several reasons, but none of them has ever prescribed stones or crystals. By the way, if you ever want to buy an agate, you should be aware that these things can be dyed. That agate on the top was dyed blue. It's not natural. Okay, obsidian. Among other things, the claim is made that obsidian can heal the soul from emotional and spiritual problems. My response, only the great physician can heal the soul. Christ will heal and give life, but people must seek him, repent of their sins, and receive him. and rhyolite lava. Among other things, the claim is made that rhyolite can give a person a sense of self-respect. So my response is, self-respect can only come from living a respectable life. The Bible continually calls on us to live blameless lives. Okay, moving on to evolution and evolutionists and their faith concerning volcanoes. Many evolutionists believe volcanoes played an important part in the origin of life in the oceans. The creation of life from non-life is foundational to the theory of evolution, or abiogenesis, which is interesting because the origin of life forms the foundation of the theory of evolution, but the origin of life has the least evidence of anything that they have to offer. So, this is the book that I'm referring to here. So it's considered Dougal Jerram, author of Introducing Volcanology. So Dr. Jerram is a British geologist and evolutionist. He has appeared on BBC television as Dr. Volcano. He says, volcanoes are thought to have played a very important role in the origins of life on Earth. So what do you think is his evidence? The famous Miller-Urey experiment, it's in the book. Even today, they believe this proves the origin of life. So Dr. Jerram believes volcanoes supply the necessary gases for the origin of life in the oceans. And this has become a sacred doctrine of evolutionists. When I say sacred, I mean it's sacred to them and their faith. You probably know what this is all about, but I'll try to explain it briefly. So here they boil water. That enters this chamber containing the gases they thought composed the primitive atmosphere, which is water, methane, ammonia, and hydrogen. And then they zap the whole thing with electricity to simulate lightning. And then they collect the results in the trap at the bottom. So this is a fact. Volcanoes do not produce the gases necessary for the Miller-Urey experiment. The Miller-Urey experiment required or used water vapor, methane, ammonia, and hydrogen. Volcanoes emit water vapor, carbon dioxide, sulfur dioxide, hydrogen fluoride, and hydrogen chloride, and some methane. I guess their assumption is that if those gases are in the primitive atmosphere, they would also be in the primitive ocean as well. But this sacred doctrine of evolution has been proven false. Evolutionists no longer hold to a reducing environment for the origin of life. The necessary gases are not to be found in the early atmosphere or in the oceans. The amino acids in the experiment never bonded to form proteins. I think that's important. It never continues in the scenario they want it to. And products that are harmful to amino acids were also produced. Now, there's also evolutionary ideas about hydrothermal vents. Some evolutionists suggest that life originated in hydrothermal vents on the ocean floor, where volcanic activity releases water and methane. So here's some facts about hydrothermal vents. Vents do release nutrients into the ocean, so that's good. These vents are teeming with life, such as microbes, tube worms, and crabs on the outside of the vents, not inside. But the question evolutionists are avoiding is, do we see any origin of life occurring today? No, we don't. Right now on Earth, we probably have every environment possible where the origin of life could take place, if it could take place. But nothing is happening. I've read a lot of books by evolutionists, and they never say we see any origin of life or anything that could possibly contribute to it happening today. So the present is not the key to the past. And volcanoes in the Bible. Can we fit volcanoes into the Bible without forcing them in? Since God created a water world in the beginning, where did land come from? On day 3 of creation, God commanded the land to rise up from the seas. In Genesis 1:9, God said, "And let the dry land appear." I don't know how that happened, if God created the land out of the water, I should say from the water, or if God created land ex nihilo within the water. And it doesn't really matter. We know that God did create the dry land and it rose up out of the water. And volcanic activity could have been a component of that land. Now, moving on to the flood, what part did volcanoes play in the flood? Genesis 7:11 says, "In the 600th year of Noah's life, in the 2nd month, 17th day of the month, the same day were all the fountains of the great deep broken up, and the windows of heaven were opened." Were the fountains of the great deep volcanoes, subterranean waters, or both? Well, I think it was talking about volcanoes. Volcanoes were associated with the initial rifting of the ocean floors at the beginning of the flood. Volcanoes could have contributed to the rain of the flood. The primary gas emitted by volcanoes is water vapor. To contribute to rain, any water released from the ocean floor must break the surface of the ocean. I think that's key. Volcanoes can emit ash high into the air. Water will collect around ash particles and fall as rain. And to aid this process, the original ocean floor was probably shallower. So this is a good illustration of volcanoes breaking the surface of the ocean and emitting water and ash. What part did volcanoes play in the Ice Age? The Ice Age is associated with the flood, kind of the aftermath. Most creation scientists say that volcanoes contributed to the formation of the Ice Age after the flood ended. And David Reeves interviewed Dr. Timothy Clary in Secrets of the Ice Age. I highly recommend this DVD. I think I got it from David Reeves. The only thing I don't like about it is that it's pretty short. It's only 32 minutes. But Dr. Cleary studied volcanism occurring during the flood. He found that volcanism peaked at the end of the flood and dropped off sharply during the Ice Age. That's important. So this is the creationist model of the Ice Age. And really only the Bible can give a mechanism for creating the Ice Age. The Ice Age would require cooler summers and abundant snowfall. Volcanoes during and after the flood could create the required conditions. Volcanoes and hot subterranean water would warm up the oceans. Warmer oceans evaporate more water. Volcanoes also emit great amounts of ash into the atmosphere, which would block out the warming rays of the sun. This has a strong cooling effect on the earth. The combination of more moisture in the atmosphere and cooler summers would create a continuous snowfall. And I come back to Red Hill cinder cone. All over the American West are cinder cones and lava flows on top of the flood strata. This is really apparent at the north rim of the Grand Canyon, where at the north rim you have all of the strata, but then on top of the strata are cinder cones with basalt flowing down the layers, down the strata of the Grand Canyon. So they occurred after the flood and probably contributed to the Ice Age. There are also indications that these lava flows ceased before the end of the Ice Age. And I'll use Red Hill as an example. By the way, the Highway 395 is right off of the slope of the cone there. If you're ever able to go that way, it's really something to see. So these are the Sierra Nevadas. These mountains were not glaciated, but farther north they were. So this picture is looking north. So when all the glaciers started to melt, all the glacial melt flowed down this valley, and then it made a sharp turn and flowed across this foreground and emptied off into a place called Fossil Falls. Now, I don't have a picture. I'm a little limited with my pictures, but if you want to look it up on a computer or your cell phone or something, just type in Fossil Falls, California, and it'll show you pictures of the falls. Of course, they're dry. It's dry now, but you can see in the foreground how it's kind of, the basalt is rounded and scoured by that glacial melt. So all of that volcanic activity occurred before the end of the Ice Age. So in conclusion, the natural world is part of the drama of the Bible. God is intimately connected to his creation. God uses things like wind and rain and volcanoes to display his power and creativity. Like Moses said in Exodus 15:11, "Who is like unto thee, O Lord, among the gods? Who is like thee, glorious in holiness, fearful in praises, doing wonders?" And then my last point here is just to encourage you to visit volcanic sites in America. America has many national parks and monuments that are volcanic in nature. And Of course, in national parks, you're not supposed to take samples. So the things I found were not in national parks. Just out on the desert. But an easy way to see live volcanoes is to travel to the big island of Hawaii. In Kona, you can take a tour by plane or helicopter, or you can drive there. I took a plane ride that one time that I was in Hawaii, and they took us right over the little volcano with the red basalt flowing out. Unfortunately, at that time, there was no lava flowing into the ocean farther to the south. But I enjoyed it very much. The only bad thing about a trip like that is that it's very short over the volcanic activity. You're only there for 3 or 4 minutes, but it's worth it. It's worth every penny. And another option is to take a tour through volcanodiscovery.com, which I have not done, but they go to the big sites. They go to Iceland and Italy, things like that. And lastly, if you are driving in a western state and you see cinder cones and lava flows, which is a good possibility, pull over and take a little hike and get to see them up close. It's a lot of fun to walk through those flows and imagine what it was like when they were red hot and flowing. Okay, I'll stop there, Rob.
Thank you, Mike. I will try to use this microphone here. And if it stops, then we'll change to that one. All right, check. 1, 2, 3. Everybody hear me okay? All right, so we are going to do the question and answers at this time. So if you have a question, let me know, and I will run around and give the mic to you. So don't say anything until you got the mic in front of your face, okay? So with that, let us start. And I see a question right over here to start with.
Thank you for this. Number 4, can you give us any kind of indication where in a western state that begins with a C, maybe?
California? Colorado?
Colorado.
Well,
That you could see cinder cones, lava flows, and stuff like
I
that.
think everything, the cones we have been eroded down.
Oh, yeah.
No, I know on I-70 by Dotsero,
Okay.
just north of the interstate there, it's some kind of an old cinder cone or volcano. I have not been there yet, but that's one.
Okay. All right.
Yeah,
That's near Dotsero.
Dotsero,
And if we went there, the people might know where it is?
probably.
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah, I don't know what exit it would be, but you might type in Dotsero volcano or Dotsero cinder cone and see what it says. It would probably have something.
Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Just a follow-up, if you go into New Mexico off of I-25, you come to Capulan Mountain, which is a cinder cone, so just a little ways east.
Yeah, New Mexico has a lot of good volcanic features. If you go through Grants, from Albuquerque going west towards Gallup, there's a lot of volcanic features along there.
In Hawaii, is the black sand beach there basalt?
Yes, black because of the basalt.
And what about the green one?
Green?
The green beach in Big Island?
What?
Did you go to the green beach in Big Island?
No, I know there's a green mineral called olivine that can be found in basalt, and possibly it's because of olivine.
Because when I was there, I didn't even think about any of this.
Yeah.
It was just beautiful.
I never heard of a green beach, though. I wish I'd heard about that when I was there.
And then you mentioned some sort of rock that when it actually came up out, it was a different type than the other kind. Would you explain that a little more, please?
Red Hill,
What was that part?
the color difference?
No, the structure of it. Yeah, so talk a little bit more about that magna versus lava. Is that right?
Well, magma just means that it's underground. Well, once it's above ground, we call it lava. But compositionally, it's the same.
So there isn't a difference. I thought you said there was physically a difference when you looked at them, those two different types of rocks.
Well,
Gabbro versus basalt.
gabbro versus basalt.
Yeah.
I don't have any granite. But you know what granite looks like? It's kind of a light colored rock. Like our Pikes Peak granite is almost orange from orthoclase. Gabbro is very similar, except it's dark gray because it has different minerals. And if you ever look at river rocks in a parking lot, you'll see white ones and dark gray ones. And that's granite and gabbro together.
Okay.
When you speak of river rock, if they're rounded, they're flood rock.
Well,
People tend to think of this river rock. No, it's flood rock. It's a demonstration.
well, I think they dug them up along rivers.
Tumbled and
Tumbled,
rounded.
yeah.
Otherwise, they would be rounded.
By the way, talking about tumbled, you probably saw the obsidian coming in. Help yourself. You can have two as long as there's enough for everyone. I just want to make sure everyone gets something. But the tumbled rock is from China. The rough stuff like this, I found this in Utah.
You didn't say a thing about that big caldera underneath Wyoming.
Yellowstone.
The one that, they're saying is fixing to blow one of these days. A huge one.
Yeah, well, I don't know what the prospects are for an eruption there. I didn't say anything about earthquakes. Of course, all volcanoes have earthquakes. Not all earthquakes have volcanoes, but I'm sure in Yellowstone they're keeping tabs on all the seismic activity, and if it ever does really blow, I'm sure they'll know about it, and and where can we go? Not California.
Have you ever looked into the La Garita caldera?
No, I know the area a little bit. I've been in the La Garita wilderness.
It's all centered around the Colorado town of Creed, and it's
Yeah.
actually considered one of the largest eruptions in Earth's history, larger than Yellowstone.
Okay. So there's a lot to see,
When we went to New Zealand and in Australia, we had Lake Taupo, and it's a huge lake, and I think it was 900, it's like 900 AD. They ended up having, eruption, and the ashfall went all the way to Italy.
Mm-hmm.
And so it was like a huge cloud, of ash and so forth that went around the globe.
Yeah.
And going all the way to Italy before it really completely settled out. You don't really know anything about that at all?
No, I don't know about that one. I know that ash can travel long distances. And And I guess there's geologists that study different kinds of ash. They put it under a microscope and they can get an idea where it came from. But I don't know about that one.
Yeah, it was just kind of amazing, the size of it. It was so, my understanding was it was really huge, and in some ways maybe larger than what was Yellowstone. And Yellowstone had like 3 different volcanic events, or huge events, with their calderas and everything. And then this Lake Tahoe, this one of them, it was actually listed as being bigger than some of the stuff in Yellowstone.
Uh-huh.
All right, we'll take a couple more questions and then wrap up here.
I was a couple minutes late, so if this question was already answered, just bear with me. There's a large rhyolite quarry south of Castle Rock, and we used it to face it. People have used it for many years. It's really a big quarry, and expanded granite. The story I was always told was that there was a volcano out west of here, 50, 60 miles away, that blew up, that caused that rhyolite to be deposited south of Castle Rock. Do you know where that volcano was?
No. Not that would have rhyolite, no. The only volcano I'm really familiar with is the one near Florissant, which the volcano itself is near Guffey, which is south of Florissant. And that's where I got this andesite from. But this is different from rhyolite, so I don't know about that one.
Alrighty, let's see. I've got a question. Back in the early part of your talk, you mentioned that there's a rare kind of volcano that'll send out basalt flows mix and then alternate with ash flows, and then basalt and ash flow. Question about that is, does the actual material that is blowing out alternate between a basalt and like a rhyolite, or does it alternate? Is it more the way it's just blowing the basalt materials out that turns it into ash flows?
Well, they don't really alternate as like that illustration. That was exaggerated with all the layers. Because it's not like they take turns, and become alternated there. But a volcano can be dominantly one thing, but at some point, something else can come in. Like at Yellowstone would be mostly rhyolite, but maybe at one point some basalt came in, and that's normal. But they don't mix, they stay separate.
All right. All right. We'll take one more question from the sound booth. So if you'll bear with me while I walk back there.
So I'm learning about a lot of things myself, but as far as what I can look for in Colorado.
What are your thoughts about the Hunga Tonga eruption in 2021?
I'm not familiar with that one. Where was that?
I forget exactly where, but it was underneath the ocean, and it affected the Earth's climate by 10%, and is the reason that we got so much rain last year and changed a lot of things.
Well, that does show that volcanoes can change conditions in the atmosphere and cool things and cause rain and eventually cause snow, like in our ice age.
Alrighty.
Feel free to come up and look at things, and You know, I kind of rather you didn't handle things, but you can handle this one. Just hold it up to light. I think you'll like that.
Okay, so, I have some announcements here. I know that this is what you all were just waiting for. Actually, I've been told by other people that I need to keep these things short. So, anyway, we just as a reminder, I know you all know this already. We are a 501c3 tax exempt organization, and it's your donations that keep us going. So, if you have anywhere in your heart to give a donation, we will be more than glad to accept. And there are multiple ways you can give, and you can figure that out. So on May 10th, our next speaker will be Mr. Dwayne Bartley. He's a double E, and he'll be speaking on science and the Bible, polar opposites, or God's truth revealed. And then on June 14th, Mr. Ed Jolman, he is a chief editor of Foundations magazine, and he is also the Creation Safari leader. He will be speaking on a talk entitled, Yes, the Bible Says the Earth is about 6,000 years old. And that meeting will be coincidental, like right on top of during the Rocky Mountain Homeschool Conference sponsored by the Christian Home Educators of Colorado. So I would encourage you to go to that meeting, to the Rocky Mountain Homeschool Conference, especially if you have kids of school age. They are the alternative to the public schools these days, and investigations show that most of the public schools are really involved in trying to change the culture and separate the kids from their parents. So I highly recommend homeschooling, and Christian Home Educators of Colorado really does a great job of it, because they provide, it's in effect, it's like turning your homeschool into a private school. And so it's a layer between you and the state of Colorado, so that the state of Colorado, as long as you're following Christian Home Educators of Colorado's rules for homeschooling, and you're signed up with them, the state of Colorado has to go through Christian Home Educators before they can get to you, which is a really good thing, because if you have to deal with the state directly, they can do all kinds of bad things to your children. So anyway, that's probably more than I'm allowed to say, but oh well. So I'd encourage you to go to that, but don't miss the Rocky Mountain Creation Fellowship meeting that month, because it'll happen on Friday, which is right in the middle of the Rocky Mountain Homeschool Conference. So with that said, I will reiterate that Mike will stay in here after the meeting, and I encourage you to come up and take a look at these fine rock samples that he has. And I'm sure he would be more than happy to answer any other questions that you might have. We do have food and drink, which is graciously supplied by Amy Shamblin in the back, through the foyer, all the way around in the back. You all know where it is. And then Mike also has some samples for giveaway out on the table out in the foyer. And Rocky Mountain Creation Fellowship, of course, we have some back issues of Foundations. Plus we have a bunch of new issues of the most recent Foundations. If you're not getting it, feel free to pick up these Foundations magazines or copies of them. You can subscribe to Foundations. They're free. If you subscribe, we would encourage anybody who's subscribing to give a $25 a year donation to secure your membership, but we will be more than happy to send it out to you even if you don't give a donation of 25 bucks. It's just that's about how much it costs per person per year to send it out, and so it'd be nice to
to have that supplemented. So with that, we will officially adjourn. So thank you.